if you go in as a voluntary patient and you're going and you're approaching the unit, probably with the help of your GP, by the way, or even your family, and you're approaching the acute unit, and you're in the acute unit receiving treatment, and you want to leave, then you can very quickly become involuntary at the behest of the treating clinician. But we have to be careful as well, because there are certain scenarios where in fact that is for the good of the person themselves. Very few, by the way. I mean, my view would be that should be very rare. That should be very rare. But nevertheless, we do have to ensure that people are protected, and we have to ensure that the treating clinician is equally protected. We've just been through all that this week in another area, but it is about getting that balance right. It is about getting the balance right, and you have to remember that most of the admissions that you were talking about in the 60s and the 50s and the 40s weren't voluntary. They were involuntary, and they were involuntary and they never became voluntary, and very few of them came back out again. So I think the circumstances, the environment, our approach is entirely different. And you're really not comparing like with like when you compare those figures. It is an entirely different environment then.
I have heard of people, they've gone in and, they've felt that they needed help, and they're being proactive about it, which is obviously what the government is trying to promote now, is positive mental health and, minding yourself. And, they found that they've gone in and when they want to leave, they've almost been said, well, you can either stay as a voluntary patient or you can be forced to stay here as an involuntary. But almost that it'll look better for yourself if you stay as a voluntary, because you're going to be classed.
Well, I'm not certain who you would be displaying that fact to, that would have any influence as to whether it looked right or not. I think again, when we're looking at the review of the Mental Health Act, and as I said, there's an expert group looking at it, I think there clearly is an issue in relation to voluntary patients becoming involuntary patients, and how does that happen? How does it happen? Because sometimes it may be necessary. As I say, my own personal view is that in very rare cases it's necessary, but it may be necessary. And if it is necessary, then there must be a whole process put around it in order to ensure that the person themselves know what the process involves, and that, by you asking to leave, and the suggestion then becoming that you're involuntary, that triggers this process. And I don't know what the expert group are going to come up with, but it's something I haven't asked them to look at.
Because I know there are instances where a voluntary patient, is regraded as an involuntary patient. I think there's 96 cases already this year, in January and February But, is that not concerning that there's no audit of the figures of why of voluntary?
Oh, there is extraordinary scrutiny of the figures.
The mental health not section. Section 23.
Every one of them. The Mental Health Commission has to be notified.
Not for Section 23, where they're rolled over 24-hour holding periods. They do not need to be notified.
No, that doesn't need to be notified. But in terms of the longer duration, there is extraordinary scrutiny, and the Mental Health Commission, which is, I suppose, the forerunner of HICWA, the Mental Health Commission do an extraordinary job. They make sure that they audit things like in terms of underage people in adult units. They look at the facility itself. They look at the service being delivered. They interview patients. They do all of that. So it is fairly scrutinised at this stage. But no system is ever so transparent that it can't be improved upon.
I know there has been criticisms from Amnesty International Ireland, for instance, on the Section 23, which is the holding power that you can hold someone for the 24 hours. And those figures do not have to be submitted to the Mental Health Commission, and that they were concerned that those sort of figures, is there an abuse? Could there be an abuse of rolling over those sort of Section 23 forms? Could you be withholding people as for 24 hours and then submitting them as a voluntary and then holding them back?
I don't think that anyone, no minister anywhere, could ever absolutely swear that there aren't abuses in the system. No one can do that. You can always only do your best in terms of ensuring that people are protected. So the other safeguard I would see in that respect is that there are so few acute units now, and the beds are at a premium, and virtually all of the service now is delivered in the community, in a person's own home. So, if beds, it's not as if they need to hold people in order to bring up their numbers. They don't need to do that anymore. So, I think that's a safeguard as well.